Looking at this animated diagram of workplace habits, we see a clear historical baseline. In the early 2000s, American Management Association data tracked off-task digital behavior, cyberloafing, at a steady 23% utilization rate. Then, that line spikes. It hits 60 to 80% across global organizations. This shift represents a sustained behavioral reality for the modern workforce. The term dates back to the 1990s tech boom. Originally, it carried a strictly pejorative weight. Management equated any non-work web surfing on these bulky desktop setups with time theft and wasted resources. Framing it as theft led to punitive responses, which failed completely. To understand why, we have to look at Edgar Schein's iceberg model of organizational culture, represented in this three-tiered diagram. At the very top, above the waterline, we have artifacts. These are the visible structures: the office layout, the dress code, the enterprise software everyone is required to use. Right at the waterline is the middle tier, espoused values. This is the official company handbook, the stated policies, and the mission statements framed on the lobby wall. But the driving force of any organization is the massive, submerged third tier, underlying assumptions. These are the unconscious beliefs, the unwritten rules, and the actual feelings pulsing beneath the corporate surface. Modern cyberloafing operates precisely in this third tier. It functions as an embedded cultural assumption, detached from whatever is written in the employee handbook. These unspoken assumptions carry the actual workforce momentum. They bypass rigid corporate structures, flowing around formal policy grids and rendering written rules invisible. An upward spike in off-task behavior doesn't prove employee laziness. It provides a diagnostic readout, exposing deep structural realities and hidden friction points. Unfiltered network access introduces enterprise risks. This visualization models corporate network architecture, highlighting red vulnerabilities created when users navigate to malicious sites. The most immediate threat is localized security. An employee streaming a movie or clicking an unchecked link can inadvertently download viruses directly into the company's hardware. Beyond security, there is the logistical drag. Heavy personal streaming from multiple employees simultaneously jams up systemic bandwidth, compromising the network performance required for actual operations. The traditional management reflex to these risks is heavy-handed. IT departments are instructed to install rigid firewalls and institute total bans on any personal device use during work hours. That reflex triggers a generational clash. This split-screen flowchart contrasts the punitive model on the left with native integration on the right, highlighting a psychological divide regarding technology. For a tech-native workforce, fluidly switching between work and social tabs is a baseline social norm. It is as natural as checking a watch. When the punitive model collides with that native integration, the organizational friction is intense. The total ban approach often terminates in a dead end, directly driving high turnover rates. The blowback is psychological. Stripping autonomy through monitoring and absolute bans sends a signal to the employee: management does not trust you. Total bans fail to eliminate distraction. They eliminate trust. Management ends up causing the exact disengagement and attrition they originally intended the bans to prevent. There is an empirical bright side. Findings challenge the assumption of productivity loss, addressing the cognitive overload compounding in the modern worker. The microbreak acts as a pressure valve. Stepping away from a spreadsheet to scroll social media for 5 minutes mitigates job stress and replenishes cognitive energy. Dr. Rashima Raja mapped the mechanics of this cycle. This cyclical loop diagram details her findings, showing how off-task behavior flows directly into a state of self-awareness. When employees utilize organizational resources for a personal break, they remain aware of their actions. That awareness transitions into a palpable level of guilt. That guilt produces a counterintuitive result. Instead of detaching further, the employee overcorrects, moving from guilt into a spike in productivity, engagement, and a heightened awareness of their specific organizational role. We have to distinguish this moderate microbreak loop from excessive, hours-long cyberloafing. They are different behavioral responses. The root cause of excessive cyberloafing is rarely laziness. It stems from an unrewarding work routine and boredom with assigned tasks. Studies correlate this excessive behavior to perceived mistreatment by leadership. It increases immediately following unfair sanctions or when an employee feels their work is ignored. Moderate cyberloafing operates as a psychological necessity for the modern worker. Extreme cyberloafing operates as a passive-aggressive protest against poor leadership. The boundary lines of network oversight changed during the pandemic. In a remote or hybrid environment, management cannot physically police off-task behavior on private home networks. This creates a vacuum often filled by informal controls. This is the management practice of maintaining implied rules and expectations regarding device use that are not officially written down or enforced. Avoiding official policy breeds operational inconsistency. Managers end up enforcing these invisible boundaries differently from team to team, or even person to person. Muddled expectations degrade organizational culture. When employees have to guess where the line is, it plants seeds of distrust among the workforce. Informal controls eventually stretch to a breaking point, triggering a sudden disciplinary overreaction from management. The workforce reacts to sudden, retroactive punishments. Employees feel targeted by rules they never formally agreed to, resulting in job dissatisfaction and organizational anger. Failing to codify digital boundaries does not provide management with flexible leadership options. It creates an environment of unpredictable punishment that erodes the stability of the existing corporate culture. The alternative to rigid bans and informal controls is a proactive framework. This three-pillar diagram outlines how organizations navigate the paradox. Pillar 1 is parameterized policy. Organizations must explicitly state the rules and allowances for personal browsing. This policy requires transparency. It must communicate the trade-off. Employees surrender a degree of privacy on company networks. Pillar 2 is the transparent implementation of tracking software to enforce that policy. This tracking software's purpose must be defined to the staff. It is a shield protecting the enterprise, not a covert surveillance tool tracking keystrokes. Pillar 3 is calibrated enforcement. Disciplinary action must be proportional and consistently applied. Leadership must distinguish between a malicious violation that requires termination and an employee who is struggling with technology addiction or burnout. Progressive companies recognize this difference. Rather than moving straight to termination, they provide counseling and treatment services for employees overwhelmed by digital integration. Allowing parameterized cyberloafing is a signal of respect. Organizations that optimize for psychological wellness and trust retain their top talent. Those clinging to primitive surveillance face rising rates of attrition.